So anyway, we are here at the Nectar Devotion um, discussion group. I have Melissa for the first time in a couple of years, I think. She used to be on, but thank you, Melissa, for coming. And I'm going to show a short video to introduce everybody to the podcast that I do with Sankirtan every Friday night. But this is a little short video, kind of a recap of what we were talking about. Can you hear this?
Just use that as a guidepost to the Srimad Bhagavatam and
Yes.
Prabhupada, for the way he presented it. Then we can actually help other people to see and be a less in anxiety, because people are suffering right now and people are very much afraid.
Yes. And we need to inject Krishna consciousness into every sphere of activity. Let me just read you one final thing over here. This is from a lecture in 1974 in Los Angeles. Prabhupada says, we can take part in everything: politics, sociology, philanthropy, so many things, provided that by taking part in that department of activities, we can advance our Krishna consciousness. So this is we have an opportunity to inject for the welfare of people in general, to inject Krishna consciousness in every sphere of influence: political, scientific, cultural, agricultural, the dynamics and the workings of society and how society is governed. So the devotees at this time have to take advantage of that and not think that it's just some political discussion.
Yeah, it's not anything outside of Prabhupada was talking about how devotees have to be expert. Like Raghunath Das Goswami, he was only interested in Krishna consciousness, but when the time arose where he had to be a little bit, diplomatic, he knew exactly what to do. Devotees should be like that as well. It's not just that you're just all spiritual all the time and you don't have to pay attention to anything else.
So this is the verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam that Sankirtan Prabhu was talking about. Prabhupada gave a class on this in 1974. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 16th chapter, verse 5. Shonaka Rishi inquired, why did Maharaj Parikshit simply punish him, since he was the lowest of the Shudras, having dressed as a king and having struck a cow on the leg? Please describe all these incidents as they relate to the topics of Krishna. Purport. Shonaka and the rishis were astonished to hear that the pious Maharaj Parikshit simply punished the culprit and did not kill him. This suggests that a pious king like Maharaj Parikshit should have once killed an offender who wanted to cheat the public by dressing as like a king, and at the same time daring to insult the purest of the animals, a cow. The rishis in those days, however, could not even imagine that in the advanced days of the age of Kali, the lowest of the Shudras will be elected as administrators and will open organized slaughterhouses for killing cows. Although hearing about a Sudraka who was a cheat and insulter of a cow was not very interesting to the great rishis, they nevertheless wanted to hear about it to see if the event had any connection with Lord Krishna. They were simply interested in topics of Lord Krishna, for anything that is dovetailed with the narration of Krishna is worth hearing. There are many topics in the Bhagavatam about sociology, politics, economics, cultural affairs, etc., but all of them are in relation with Krishna, and therefore all of them are worth hearing. Krishna is the purifying ingredient in all matters, regardless of what they are. In the mundane world, everything is impure because of its being a product of the three mundane qualities. The purifying agent, however, is Krishna. Here is some audio of Śrīla Prabhupāda himself explaining this verse in Los Angeles on January 2nd, 1974.
Really the basic principle is Jadi Krishna Kathāsram. Devotees are interested to discuss something if it is helping us how we can become more and more attached to Krishna. That is it. Otherwise, we are not interested in the matter of general principles of morality, social culture, ethics. They are required. But because this material world means it is a contaminated world, infected world. So, here in this material world, so-called morality or immorality is the same, because it is infected. Let's try to understand. If there is an epidemic infection, so in that condition, first of all, what is the necessity? First thing is to disinfect the epidemic. In the infected area, you cannot derive any benefit by discussing morality or immorality. The man is dying out of infection. So, to immediately dying person who is sure to die due to infection, what is the use of giving instruction on morality or immorality? He is going to die. Similarly, in this world, they have invented so many things: philanthropism, altruism, nationalism, thisism, thatism, but without Krishna. It is the same position. Without Krishna consciousness, he is going to hell. However moral he may be, however pious he may be, so-called. If he does not know Krishna, he does not know meaning. Therefore, the first condition was that we are interested to hear about Maharaj Parikshit punishing the colleague, provided it helps us to advance in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, they are interested. This will be the principle of devotion. We can take part in everything: politics, sociology, or philanthropism, altruism. There are so many things that are discovered. Provided by taking part in that department of activities, we advance our Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, reject. Don't take part. It is implicated. That philosophy, technique, Harinath Nasri Pani, that we should fish but don't touch the water. If on the plea of fishing you become fall down in the water and you are gone, what's that? Then what is this? So sometimes we say that you take part in politics. Our business is not to take part in politics for acquiring big posts like president or secretary or attorney general. But we do that. They have no meaning for this post. Because for a devotee, what are these posts? Even the post of Lord Brahma or Indra, the heavenly king, it has no meaning.
One of Trump world's favorite
Wait a minute. What am I?
relates the idea that President Trump deserves the Nobel.
I thought something was going on in the background there. Sorry about that. So what did you think about that?
I mean, a lot of different topics were covered. It was starting to get into like posts that you were assigned, and like it started to talk about like one of my favorite parts of the like sort of like from the Bhagavad Gita, right, where they talk about how you don't leave society, you don't leave your post, you just take up Krishna consciousness where you are.
Yeah, that was actually Lord Chaitanya's instruction to one householder. The householder wanted to go with him and leave everything and leave his family behind. He said, "No, you just stay here. You stay with your family, but become a devotee." And one example was Raghunath Das Goswami. He was one of the six Goswamis, a very advanced personality, and all he cared about was Krishna. But yet, at the same time, when he had to rescue his uncle from the hands of the Kazi, he had to get involved in politics and do all kinds of diplomatic things. So it's not that a devotee doesn't know how to do anything. He is expert in dealing with everything. He knows how to deal in the material world, and he pays attention to what's going on, but he just doesn't let it contaminate you. It's just like Prabhupada was saying about fishing. You can fish, but don't fall in the water. Otherwise, what's the use of fishing? So the thing is to be in the world, but not of the world, and don't let it contaminate. We preach to people, we talk to people. That's our job, as Lord Chaitanya has asked everybody to be guru and try to save everybody that you meet. Everybody you meet, you should say, "My dear sir, we just don't invent anything. We're just like exactly what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, we do. Krishna is Supreme Personality. My dear sir, surrender to Krishna. That's it. That's all we do. We just repeat Krishna's words, and we don't manufacture anything." And Lord Chaitanya has ordered us, just try to speak what Krishna has said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and try to liberate everybody in the land. That's his order. So that's what our job is. We're not like big guru or anything like that. We're just trying to fulfill Lord Chaitanya's order. And if we do that, then ultimately that no one is more pleased, Krishna says, than one who preaches this message to my devotees. And nor will there ever be one more dear. And so Krishna is very much appreciated. He shakes the hand of a preacher, for disseminating this knowledge, because like I said in the very beginning, people are suffering right now. I don't know if you were there when you weren't there, probably, because this one devotee from Mumbai, one of Shama Sundar's friends from Mumbai. He's an Indian devotee, and he's a big devotee there. But he was talking about some stuff, and Ashley asked a question because she was feeling a lot of anxiety about it seems like the world is like so crazy right now, and things are going like, how do we deal with that? And he said, well, basically he said, well, stop watching the news. But I didn't feel that was a very satisfactory answer. You can't let it overpower you, but at the same time, you have to know how to deal with it on an equilibrium where you can cultivate knowledge and transcendence at the same time, nescience and transcendence, at the same time. That's what's recommended as well. You have to understand what Krishna is, how to see things through Krishna's eyes and through the eyes of the scripture, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. And then we can see things properly. And because we don't see anything properly, because the majority of people are believing like they are totally an illusion and they're being misled,
Everyone is suffering, and it's our job as devotees to try to alleviate that suffering from in a person-to-person basis, or as much as we can, as widely as we can. And but we do our little part. Krishna is pleased, and if Krishna is pleased, then that is our, that's the goal of life. Well, you don't have to do anything more than that. That's the um, that's the goal of life, is to please Krishna. Because what's more to do? I mean, what do you got to do after that? Nothing. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because Sankirtan is a great devotee, and we have to get the association of these Prabhupada disciples who were there, right? And had association. I was unfortunate because I'd never met Prabhupada. I came to New Vrindavan in 1977, and he was very sick. He was in Vrindavan on his deathbed, actually, and all the devotees were blaming themselves for him being sick because they had learned that when a spiritual master gets sick, it's usually due to the sinful activities of his disciples, so they were just like really in a bad mood, depressed and, like kind of blaming themselves. It was kind of a heavy situation, but I never met him. It's unfortunate, but I'm meeting him through his books. That's the way I do it. But let's read a little bit, and then you can, if you have any questions at all about what we're talking about, what we just talked about, or what we're talking about in the Nectar of Instruction here. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Hold on. Nectar of Devotion, I mean. I got to figure out where we are. Okay, this is where we are. Chapter 2, find. Okay, here we are. This is where we left off. Him. Do you know Hamang? He's an Indian devotee. He lives in Squirrel Hill. Hold on, I'm going to switch it to the share mode here. Can you see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll just take turns reading paragraphs. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. I mean, you've done this before. You know how with the protocol here. I'll just read the first paragraph, and then you can read the second one. Narada Muni mentions this sadhana bhakti in Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 1st chapter, verse 32. He says there to King Yudhishthir, "My dear king, one has to fix his mind on Krishna by any means," end quote. That is called Krishna consciousness. It is the duty of the Acharya, a spiritual master, to find the ways and means for his disciple to fix his mind on Krishna. That is the beginning of sadhana bhakti. See, this whole chapter is called sadhana bhakti, or practicing Krishna consciousness. It's the second chapter of the book. And it's the beginning stages where sadhana bhakti means, the spiritual master gives you there's certain things that you can do to enhance or awaken your own Krishna consciousness. So, you get up early in the morning, you take a bath, you go to the temple, you offer flowers, you chant your rounds, you read the books, you associate with devotees, that kind of thing. And that kind of it's not a matter of practice. That's what Hemang and I were talking about last week. It's not a practice that you can somehow or other get trained up to do. It's actually an awakening process. Sadhana bhakti means awakening that innate Krishna consciousness in our hearts. It's already there. It's not something that's superimposed in our mind and our hearts. It's already there naturally in every living entity. That's why when Prabhupada came here to America and in the 70s, somebody asked him at the airport, he was pretty famous then, but a reporter asked him, what are you coming here to teach? And he said, I've come to teach you what you've forgotten. Krishna consciousness. So you can read this, the second paragraph here.
Okay. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was given has given us an authorized program for this purpose, centered around the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. This chanting has so much power that it immediately attaches one to Krishna. That is the beginning of sadhana bhakti. Somehow or other, one has to fix his mind on Krishna. The great Saint Ambarish.
Ambarish. Yeah, the dot under the S is pronounced SH.
Ambarish Maharaj, although a responsible king, fixed his mind on Krishna, and similarly, anyone who tries to fix his mind in this way will very rapidly make progress in successfully reviving his original Krishna consciousness.
Now, this sadhana bhakti, or practice of devotional service, may also be divided into two parts. The first part is called service according to regulative principles. One has to follow these different regulative principles by the order of the spiritual master or on the strength of the authoritative scriptures, and there can be no question of refusal. That is called vaidhi, or regulated. One has to do it without argument. Another part of sadhana bhakti is called raganuga. Raganuga refers to the point at which, by following the regulative principles, one becomes a little more attached to Krishna and executes devotional service out of natural love. For example, a person engaged in devotional service may be ordered to rise early in the morning and offer arti, which is a form of deity worship. In the beginning, by the order of a spiritual master, one rises early in the morning and offers arti, but then he develops a real attachment. When he gets this attachment, he automatically tries to decorate the deity and prepare different kinds of dresses and thinks of different plans to execute his devotional service nicely. Although it is within the category of practice, this offering of loving service is spontaneous. So the practice of devotional service, sadhana bhakti, can be divided into two parts, namely regulative and spontaneous. See, the whole key is to actually become attracted to the message and to the service itself. And when you're, all of your occupational activities, unless they develop an attachment to Krishna, that attraction is considered to be a useless waste of time. So, because the goal of life is to develop an attraction for Krishna and to hear his words and be attracted by his name, form, qualities, pastimes. And then one develops a spontaneous attraction, and that's like a natural thing, and you become, and then, that deepens into like a personal type of, like you're thinking that Krishna is mine, Krishna is a property of his devotees, and the devotees are Krishna, and the devotees are Krishna's property. They don't think of anybody else but Krishna, and Krishna doesn't think of anybody else but them. It's a really sweet relationship. And it's perfect because Krishna is perfect, and he can bring out the best in us. And so therefore, by this practice, just by a little austerity, it might be like poison in the beginning, but it's nectar in the end. But sense gratification, what everybody's doing in this world, it's just every holiday, even, Christmas and football games and stuff, it's just an excuse to drink and eat meat and do all these other things. And it might be nectar in the beginning, but it's poison in the end, because it doesn't last very long, and it really can't give you any satisfaction. But Krishna consciousness, even though it's a little austere to get up in the morning and chant your rounds and read books and everything, in the end, it's nectar, and it's actually lead you to an unending, ever increasing platform of an ocean of ecstasy. It's called Anandam Buddhivardhanam. Ananda means an ecstasy, and Buddhi means ocean. So what activity in this material world do we have that can give you that unlimited happiness? Even if you like to do something like eat ice cream or watch TV, after a while you just get sick of it, So what can give you an ever-increasing ocean of transcendental ecstasy? That's only in Krishna consciousness. So everything else is pretty much a waste of time. So anyway, you can read the next two paragraphs, starting with Rūpa Gosvāmī.
Rūpa Gosvāmī defines the first part of devotional practice, or Vaidhi Bhakti, as follows. When there is no attachment or no spontaneous loving service to the Lord, and one is engaged in the service of the Lord simply out of obedience to the order of the spiritual master or in pursuance of the scriptures, such obligatory service is called Veda Bhakti. These principles of Veda Bhakti are also described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, first chapter, verse 5, where Sukadeva Goswami instructs the dying Maharaj Parikshit as to his course of action. Maharaj Parikshit met Sukadeva Goswami just a week before his death, and the king was perplexed as to what should be done before he was to pass on. Many other sages also arrived there, but no one could give him the proper direction. Sukadeva Goswami, however, gave his direction to him as follows. My dear king, if you want to be fearless in meeting your death next week, for actually everyone is afraid at that point of death, then you must immediately begin the process of hearing and chanting and remembering God. If one can chant and hear Hare Krishna and always remember Lord Krishna, then he is sure to become fearless of death, which may come at any moment. It was funny when he was like, when you arrive at your death next week, I'm like, okay.
All right, yeah. That's like a pretty freaking out, situation there, You're going to die next week, but King Parikshit, he was powerful enough to counteract that curse. He was like a pure devotee of Krishna. But he said, okay, well, let's just, I'm going to renounce my kingdom and I'm going to take this opportunity to think of Krishna. And I'm going to invite all the sages to come and they can instruct me what to do. And he's not going to counteract it. He also respected the Brahminical curse. And so he was sitting on the bank of the Ganges, and all these sages and saints were coming from all over the universe to see him, like Narada Muni, the transcendental spaceman, and Vyasadeva, the compiler of the Vedas. And finally, this young boy, he was only like 16 years old, came up. He was being followed by a bunch of, children and dogs, and he was naked. But that was Vyasadev's son. That was Shukadeva Goswami, and everybody immediately understood this is a great saintly personality, even though he didn't have any clothes on. And so he immediately they asked him to speak to Maharaj Parikshit, and they sat in the Ganges for 7 days, and he didn't eat anything or sleep, and he sat and listened for 7 days straight. And in the end, the snake bird bit him, and he passed away on schedule. But he didn't have any, because he was so absorbed in the Shukadeva Goswami's reading his telling of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that he didn't feel any hunger or thirst. What to speak of even being fearless at the point of his death. So it's just like nowadays. That's what you're supposed to do if you're old like me. I just turned 70, and so I'm like a fossil, and the fossils are about ready to become extinct. So it's like I got to get my life together. I got to get a day planner or something. I don't know what to do. And so the thing is, you're supposed to actually give up your attachments. Everybody's attached to their family and whatever they're doing, and just like these rock stars. You ever heard of the Who? You're pretty young, but you've heard of the Who.
I've heard of the Who.
Yeah, it's like a 60s rock band, and they had a song. It was called "I Hope I Die Before I Get Old." Now the lead guitarist of the Who, that rock group did their final concert a few weeks ago, but the lead singer or the lead guitarist, Pete Townsend, he said he wants to do a solo tour after. He's 80 years old, and he wants to do a solo tour afterwards. I saw this cartoon of a bunch of old guys with walkers, all hunched over, and I said, and there was a kid next to him, and they're going into an auditorium to the rock concert, and he said, "Aren't you guys a little a little old to be going to a rock concert?" And they said, "We're the band." But like all these guys, like Ozzy Osbourne died a couple days after his last concert. They never quit. It doesn't matter what they do. They're really attached to their, like if who doesn't want to be a rock star, right? Have the adoration and all the people in the concert know the words of your songs and everything. And it's like an attachment. But you got to give all that up. You got to become attached to something. You got to be attached to Krishna. Otherwise, at the time of death, you're not going to remember Krishna. We remember whatever you think of at the time of death, that state of mind you attain without fail. And so, in order to not be afraid at the time of death, Shukadeva Goswami advised the king, in order to be fearless, you have to hear and chant about Krishna. And so that's what he did for 7 days. So it's a good lesson. My wife used to be a hospice nurse, and she dealt with that all the time. But it's really important, and nobody really pays any attention to it nowadays. They just think, well, at death, everybody, you're finished. Even my father, who was supposedly a very intelligent person, I mean, he was a professor of physics, but he said, after I'm dead, I don't care. You can just throw my ashes in the forest. He didn't believe in God. He didn't think anything would happen after death. There's nothing after death. And that's unfortunate because he really doesn't know that after you die, it's just another transition, from you get old, the body gets old and worn out. You just get another body, just like you were a young baby at one point. You became a young girl, and uh, you're a young woman. But at the time, you become an old woman, and then when that body gets old and worn out, you get another body according to your activities and your consciousness at the time of death. That will determine, and what you've done in this life, it will determine your next birth. And so we have to prepare for that. It's like a final exam. The final exam is you're on your own. You have to do it yourself. There's nobody else who's going to help you. You have to fly your own plane. So it's very, very important to train oneself up like that so that you won't be fearful. Because everybody's afraid of death, but you don't have to be. The devotee doesn't even care. I remember, there was this like made-for-TV movie in the 80s. It was called The Day After. You ever heard of that movie? It's like a TV movie. It was,
No.
yeah, you were probably born after that. I'm definitely, because this was like 1982 or 83. So the movie was about Kansas City getting hit with a nuclear bomb. This is in the middle of the Cold War. And so Kansas City got hit with the nukes from Russia. And the whole like landscape and everything everybody was walking around. They had radiation sickness. The whole civilization was destroyed. Everybody was really bummed out. People had to have psychological counseling after that TV aired on TV because it was so it shocked everybody. And then Bhaktipada, my spiritual master, I remember him saying, the karmis have no hope. In other words, ordinary people have no hope, but devotees have no fear. So if you hear and chant about Krishna, you will have no fear, not even of death. So that is, um, but you have to actually get that protection of Krishna, and you're not fearful of anything, because Krishna is there and he'll protect you no matter what. So I'll read this next paragraph here. We got to probably wrap this up at around 7:45, or we could go a little later if you want.
Oh,
But
I didn't think we were going all the way to 7:45. It's 6:45 right now.
6:45. 6:45 is what I
Oh,
meant.
okay.
Yeah, Hemang, when he kind of requested that I keep it to 45 minutes or at most an hour. But I'm going to read the next paragraph. We can read the next couple of paragraphs. You can read the one after this. But then, and if you have any questions, then you can, um, you know.
Okay, thanks.
So Shukadeva Goswami has recommended to Parikshit Maharaj that in order to be fearless of death, one has to hear and chant and remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, by all means. He also mentions that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Sarvatma. Sarvatma means the super soul of everyone. In other words, he's in everyone's heart. The individual soul is like in our heart area. It's like very small. But the super soul is the Paramatma, and he's about thumb high. And that's what the yogis meditate on. He's thumb high and he lives in the heart area. I guess that's why they have all these love songs. I'm in your heart, you're in my heart, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but because that is where the consciousness of where our spiritual nature resides. And when that atma or the soul leaves the body starts to decompose. And the sarvatma, soul, a super soul of everyone. See, the individual soul is aware of just what's going on in our own body. But the super soul, he knows what's going on in everybody's body and the entire universe simultaneously. You compare it to like two birds in a tree, but sitting in the same tree, but they're not KASSING. They're just two friendly birds, and they're just minding their own business. And the smarter, stronger bird, though, is a super soul. And the individual soul is like a smaller bird. He's eating the fruit of the tree and just enjoying the material world. But the super soul is just a friendly bird, and he doesn't interfere with the activities of the Atma. But he kindly accompanies every living entity in their sojourn through the material world and brings them back to Godhead if they want to go there. I mean, he fulfills everyone's desire. You know, if you want to go to hell, you can go to hell. He'll let you. He'll actually give you some instruction. If you want to go to heaven, he'll let you do that. But if you want to leave the world completely, he'll give you intelligence to do that as well. A devotee really doesn't care where he goes as long as he can remember Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that anyone who becomes a devotee of the Lord is never vanquished. Others, however, are always vanquished. Quote, vanquished, end quote, means that after getting this human form of life, a person does not come out of the entanglement of birth and death, and thus misses his golden opportunity. Such a person does not know that he's being thrown by the laws of nature. Go ahead.
Suppose one does not develop Krishna consciousness in this human form of life. He will be thrown into the cycle of birth and death, involving 8,400,000 species of life, and his spiritual identity will remain lost. One does not know whether he is going to be a plant or a beast or a bird or something like that, but there are so many species of life. The recommendation of Rūpa Gosvāmī for reviving our original Krishna consciousness is that somehow or other we should apply our minds to Krishna very seriously and thus also become fearless of death. After death, we do not know our destination because we are completely under the control of the laws of nature. Only Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is controller over the laws of nature. Therefore, if we take shelter of Krishna seriously, there will be no fear of being thrown back into the cycle of so many species of life. A severe devotee will surely be... Can you scroll down a little bit?
Oh, sure.
Transferred to the abode of Krishna as affirmed in Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, it says the most dangerous type of fear is the fear of not getting a human form of life. Because then you have to go through the whole process again. It's a gradual evolution of the soul. You get transferred from one body to another, but an animal can't determine his own destiny. Only a human form of life, one gets the opportunity to choose whether or not to be in the, whether you can leave this material world or not. So it's a very rare opportunity in the human form to get out of the cycle of birth and death. It's like a vicious cycle. Because nobody wants to get born, nobody wants to die, nobody wants to, get old or get diseased. But those are the four evils of this material world. So that's just one reason to get out of it. But the thing is, it's not the goal of a devotee. The goal of a devotee is to just serve Krishna. He doesn't care even if he's in hell. It's just like a thresher of wheat. What does a wheat thresher do? It threshes wheat. It doesn't matter if it's in hell or in heaven. It does the same thing. So a devotee just serves Krishna, whatever position he's in, whatever Krishna gives him offers him. If he's suffering, he'll just go on doing his duty and humbly execute his service, knowing that whatever suffering I've got is due to my own sinful activities, and he'll go on with faith in Krishna. And if you continue on in that way, you'll eventually go back to Godhead because it'll be your rightful due, because You remain faithful no matter what, you know. A lot of people, like, for example, I won't even do anything if I get like a hangnail or something. But a real devotee will do his duty no matter what the situation is, you know. Do you have any questions or anything?
Um, I mean, there was a lot of topics covered today.
Yeah.
Um,
But mostly the basic synopsis of it is the practice of devotional service. You know, you have to first of
well,
all kind of
I
force.
actually do have a question. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just want to make sure we have time for it. So in other scriptures, like in the Bhagavad Gita, they talk about how no progress is ever lost,
Right.
but if you lose the human form, you have to go all the way back. So like, isn't that contradicting each other?
Not really, because well, it says whatever progress you've made in this life will be picked up at the time of death and your next birth. Like, say, for example, even if you lose your consciousness, or even if you lose this human form of life, like, for example, there's a great king named Maharaj Bharat, and he was a king, and he renounced his kingdom like you're supposed to do, uh, and he went to the forest and had a little hermitage, and then one time he was uh, he was in his little hut there, and there was a stream nearby, and a pregnant doe jumped over. She was startled by a lion or a tiger that roared very loudly, and she jumped over the stream in fright, and she miscarried the little fawn in the water. And so Maharaj Bharat, the mother just died after that, and the king or the sage, you know, who was living in the hermitage said, you know, he said, I got to take care of this little deer, you know. And so he raised the deer and it became very affectionate to the deer, and he did what deer do, you know, like kind of nuzzle your head and do affectionate things. And he developed a lot of attraction for the deer. And he knew he was like neglecting his own spiritual activities, but he said, it's actually my duty to take care of this. He was actually renouncing his own spiritual duty in order for, because of his attraction for this deer. And one day the deer wandered away and he was looking for it and he fell down and died. And so, because he was thinking of the deer, he became a deer in his next life. And but the deer, because he had performed that activity in his previous life, he was hanging out near some other sages in the same forest area, and he remembered uh, he remembered it, you know, the deer uh, always thought he kind of remembered his past life, and so in his next birth as Jad Bharat, he didn't want to make the same mistake again. He took birth as a human being immediately after he left the deer body, and he didn't want to make any mistakes this time. So he pretended like he was deaf, dumb, and blind, and he would walk around naked, and people would throw poop at him, and you know, pass air in his face, and they would insult him and everything. But he didn't care because he was fixed in his consciousness, and he just pretended that he was dumb, but he wasn't. He was actually a great saint. And you know, but anyway, it's a long story. But anyway, he recovered his previous mentality, even though he was in a deer body. So whatever you do, it's not going to be lost. You know, if you can up to a certain point, if you execute your Krishna consciousness for like 2%, in your next life you'll start out at 3%. It's like an eternal bank account. Whatever you deposit into that account will be paid back to you in your next life, and you'll start accumulating more from there. And it says in the Bhagavad Gita that if you lead a pious life, but you don't completely uh, execute your devotional service perfectly, and you have to take birth again, you probably take birth in a rich family or a family of Brahmanas, like Prabhupada. His father and mother were both devotees, you know, and so he was very fortunate um, to be born in that family. And then he finished up his, you finish up your activities in this life and go back to Godhead after that, perhaps, just depends. But it is never lost. Trayate Mahato Bayat. Mahato Bayat means the greatest fear is that of falling down, and because the devotee fears that more than anything, because you can't remember Krishna when you're an animal. Even though the deer kind of remembered, it's not pure consciousness. So a devotee doesn't fear anything except forgetting Krishna, and we don't want to forget Krishna. So that is the greatest fear for a devotee. For a karmi or ordinary person, the greatest fear may be like losing your money or losing your family or something like that, but or pain or suffering. The devotee doesn't care anything about that. He just cares that he wants to remember Krishna, and he's very attached to that, and he just wants to be around the devotees. Even Uddhava, who is a great devotee of Krishna, he said, "Let me take birth not even in Vrindavan. I just want to take birth as a blade of grass outside of Vrindavan, so that when the residents of Vrindavan go outside, and maybe the milkmaids are going out to fetch some water or something, the dust on their feet will hit my head because I'll be a piece of grass outside of Vrindavan." He didn't even want to be born inside Vrindavan, but he was just glorifying the inhabitants of Vrindavan because they're all on that spontaneous platform of love of Krishna. They all just love Krishna. They don't know that he's God. They don't really, even when he shows himself to be God, they can't even understand, because they just think of him as a sweet boy. And so Krishna actually covers them over, so they can't even understand that he's God, because otherwise, in a mood of awe and reverence, you can't really have that intimate relationship with Krishna. Krishna gives you the ability, he covers you over. Like when Krishna ate dirt one time, all his friends were complaining. He said he ate dirt, and he said, "No, my friends are lying." He's like a 5-year-old boy. And so I have not eaten dirt. If you want, you open my mouth. And his mother said, and Mother Yashoda said, "Well, open your mouth and I'll see if you've eaten dirt or not." And so he opened his mouth, and Mother Yashoda saw all of the universes and all of the demigods and everything in the creation, including herself and him on her lap, simultaneously inside his mouth. And so she was kind of like blown away, and she thought, "What am I seeing here? Am I dreaming? No. Am I crazy? No." But then she thought, "Well, Krishna is my little boy, and I must feed him my breast milk." And so she forgot everything and forgot that he's what she saw, and just fed her child. So Krishna does that. He'll cover you over so that you don't have that like interruption of pure parental affection. You can have parental affection for Krishna. You can have Krishna as your lover, as your friend, or as a servant, or kind of like a neutral relationship, like the cows or the trees of Vrindavan. You have like a neutral relationship with Krishna. But whatever it is, it's perfect, and we don't know what our relationship is. But this is a process of Krishna consciousness. We'll discover what it is in due course of time. If we continue on the path, we'll find out what our real relationship with Krishna is. We have an eternal relationship with Krishna. We just have to, have that revealed to us in due course of time. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. It's so nice to see you again. You and I are actually kind of a similar mentality, I think. We've always had kind of like the same viewpoint on whatever we've gone through, like like it's as far as like the world, seeing the world as it is, and like when they're going through the pandemic, you had a certain view that was kind of similar to mine. But as far as like vaccines and that kind of thing. But I appreciate your friendship, and hopefully maybe we can continue this, Krishna willing. Of course, you never know if you're gonna. We do this every Tuesday,
Sunday night, no, Tuesdays at 7 o'clock, but you can't go to that either because that's Tuesday. But maybe every Sunday night you can hop on. Hopefully there'll be more people. But it's you know, two is better than nothing, you know. I just
Yeah.
kind of shut it down if nobody shows up. But you know, for the past like 4 or 5 weeks, I've usually, you know, like only had a couple of times that nobody's shown on. So I look at it as Krishna's mercy that you were able to go on tonight. I think Zivi was busy and Alicia, she's uh she's just like taking a break, I think, because she has to take care of her parents that are their father had a stroke and stuff. So it's a
Oh,
difficult situation for her. But anyway, thank you for joining, and maybe next week on Sunday.
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.